She's late. She's something. Okay. All right. We're going to call the regular Board of Ed meeting to order for Wednesday, May 10th at 6:30 PM. Pledge of Allegiance. Do any public comment? Okay, so we, just so everybody knows, we do have a quorum. We have, Bill Mendolia is on virtually. No public comments, so we have a presentation tonight, by Ian Lacey. Thank you for joining us. He's going to present some of the information on the ground study that we had completed by Tom Irwin Advisors. He was the lead project advisor. Really appreciate you coming in. It was a really comprehensive study, a lot of really great information. I'm learning a lot about soil. So I'm just going to hand it over to you and let you kick it off. And then if you have some time for us to ask some questions, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. First off, just while we're talking, how much time do I have?
I would say, take as much as you need to be thorough, but maybe if we could keep it to about 15 or 20 minutes on the presentation side, does that work for you?
That's fine.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
great. Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening to the members online. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. And yeah, we were contacted by Bill probably the back end of last year now, and so I came out and met with Bill, walked the field, and suggested that the best way forward would be for us to do an analysis of the field. And in that analysis, just very quickly, we look at the soils, as you mentioned. We also look at the turf, the grasses. We look at the levels, the gradients on the fields as well. We look at the infields as well as the outfields of the softball and baseball areas. And then we carry out our analysis, which is really where we will take test pits. So we excavate test pits down to as deep as we can get normally, but usually about 12 to 16 inches. And we're really looking just to see what we call the soil profile, how that is layered. And that will tell us things such as if it's potentially going to drain well or not drain well. We can see a lot from just that one test pit. We also harvest soil ourselves and send that off to laboratories around the country that we use, and then they will test that for us and analyze that. And we're looking to see what we call a particle size distribution, sand, silt, and clay percentages that are in that soil. So that's sort of one element of it. Then we do what we call our performance testing as well. So we'll use a pentometer to read compaction levels. We use what we call a cleg hammer to read the hardness of a field. We'll do an infiltration test. So we use a double ring infiltrometer. And all of these tools are helping us understand not just what the soil is made up of or looks like, but also how would the field be performed, if athletes and students were playing. One of the things that Bill had said to me in my initial walk around with him was that the fields get very wet in the winter or the early spring, and usually whenever it rains reasonably heavy. So in most soils, what we're looking for is we're looking for that water to soak in or infiltrate, as we call it, and then percolate, move down through the soil. And we time that. And we're looking for something around 1 inch to 2 inches an hour upwards is what we would classify as a reasonably good pre-draining soil. Unfortunately, we didn't see that with the soils. It was very slow draining. So if you imagine it this way, the amount of rain falling, if it can't infiltrate or percolate through the soil, eventually it will pull back up, come back to the surface. And then it can't drain anywhere until either it stops raining and then we have drying conditions, which are obviously less likely, though we've got good weather today at the moment. So when we pull all of that information together, that helps us understand, the route that we think is best for you to take forward. And we put that into our recommendations. And we're looking at a few things with our recommendations. We're not just looking at, well, let's just throw money at everything and fix it. Yes, a lot of the solutions that you're seeing in the report are expensive. We don't hide that, unfortunately. I hate being the bearer of that too. It's always me that has to do this, so all the other guys get off scot-free. I'm the one that has to face the music, as it were. And I say, well, you do all the analysis to allow me to face the music. But really what we're trying to look at is, what is the level of usage on a facility such as this? School usage, is it used to, not just for sports, but obviously for recreation time and things like that. And so we're looking and looking at it from the perspective of, well, if we decide that you should rebuild these fields and have Fenway Park out there, or another suitable baseball team, I'll keep that one, neutral. Are you going to be able to maintain it? Are you going to be able to seriously look after that field? The answers are probably not. So what we want to do is understand what you are capable of being able to maintain. And so we sort of start at the end of the equation with the maintenance. So we understand that, and we've spoken about that, and then that helps us decide what is the best way forward. Now, in most instances, we certainly want longevity, whatever we provide as a recommendation. We don't want it just to be a Band-Aid fix for a year or two. We're looking longer term than that, for sure. But we're also trying to then balance how will the school and the district maintain those fields so that they get longevity out, so that we don't leave you with a beautiful set of fields that you can never maintain. Equally, we leave you with fields that you can maintain because we design them correctly, have them built correctly. So in the report, you'll see in our recommendations or solution sections that we always put a couple of options there, two options. One is probably more sympathetic to your budget, but would still give you great opportunity to play for many, many years on the fields without any real problems. And the other is really, the sort of the Rolls Royce in England, that you would call it a Cadillac or something like that here. It's more the Cadillac, which, yes, will guarantee lots and lots of years of great use, but again, that would cost a lot more money initially. And I know that capital improvement plans, are there for a good reason, but for us, we treat your money as our money in a sense, so we don't want you to have to waste it. So we, in our recommendations section, we look at things differently. We look at things such as, are we going to help you rebuild the fields or advise you to do that? Good evening. Or are we looking at what we call surface rehabilitation? So that's where we take a field that isn't performing well for a number of reasons that we found in our study, and then help rehabilitate. And that could include a lot of different operations, but generally those operations are something that we call phrase mowing, and that's really where we sort of plane off most of the turf. Now, it's not quite as aggressive as that, so don't worry too much. We tend to leave all of the good quality grasses because they grow much lower in our soil. So that the particular machine that we use doesn't pick those up, but it picks all the weed up and all the weed grasses up because they grow higher in the soil. So we want rid of those, but we want to keep the good grasses with them. And there are some good grasses out there, for sure. And then we are going to carry out, or suggest to carry out, what we call sandbank. And that's where another machine will come in after the phrase mowing has been completed. And it will basically put a slit in the soil about 1 inch wide and about 6 to 7 inches deep. And it will pack that full of sand. it's a really cool operation. I can send you links to these pieces of equipment just so you can see what they actually do. And that starts to help guarantee our surface range. So at the very worst, these slits are usually 6 to 7 inches apart. So we do that right across all of the fields so that we then have the ability to be able to, any water that's fallen can go straight through the sand slits, straight down into the lower, what we call the lower root zone of the subbase. And that's where we want to park the water, because when we park it there, it's generally not going to come back up. It's going to dissipate naturally into the subsoils. So it's a very aggressive approach, and you will lose the field's usage for 10 to 12 weeks on average. But it's a really great sort of set of operations for these types of fields because it rehabilitates them literally from the start at work. So that's what we've suggested is the most appropriate sort of way forward. There is another option, as I've said, which is let's dig it up and start again type thing, but I don't think we are at that stage. Even if we felt as though you had the money for that, the budget for that, we don't need to do it. So we're trying to balance your budget needs with the needs of the school, the athletes, the students, and obviously the maintenance team. And these operations, we've carried these types of operations out in many schools throughout Connecticut, New England generally, and we've had fantastic results from it. We've taken fields that have literally been, nobody wanted to play on these fields to suddenly build it, they will come, everybody wanted to play on them. So we had we gave, people like yourself the nice headache of everybody wants to play on these fields now, and nobody wants to play on the field. So that's sort of how we have approached it. And that's what we think would be the best, option at this moment in time. And I've got just one caveat to all of this, is that I know that you do have the ability to irrigate the fields, but really for this all to work the way that we really see it working as positive, the installation of irrigation is almost essential. You amongst everybody else in New England and probably the northern half of America, last year suffered from a horrific drought. And while we may not get that kind of drought again for many years, we do touch on it quite often, and it does get extremely dry for long periods. So what we would like is it's going to sound a bit weird, but we always use an irrigation system more as an emergency measure than it is something that must be used all the time. But the ability to have that use, for instance, when we're renovating, when the maintenance is being carried out, is absolutely crucial to the success of these types of approaches. In fact, without these types of approaches, without the irrigation, these types of approaches, maybe some of you say don't do until we can trust an irrigation system is in place. So, sadly, it's that has to come almost first or at the same time. Now, there's ways to do this. You don't have to do all the fields at the same time. You can, obviously, your budget would be better spared if we're doing one field each year. The irrigation could be something that's installed on a, piece by piece approach as well. So when an irrigation system is installed, it's sometimes much easier for the contractor to come in and install it fully. But if the budget wouldn't allow that, we can certainly look at it as per a field, so that we know at least then we would have the irrigation need for the work that would be carried out on the field. But that's really how we've gotten to tonight, as it were, and what I'm here to talk about here. So, and I'm sure you've got plenty of questions. I'm sure the report, as much as it might have been in-depth. There's probably a lot of information in there that you may be looking at and thinking, what does that mean? What does this mean? You know, I'm more than happy to come back and spend another time, you know, explaining some more of those things for you if need be. But initially, that's sort of, you know, the nutshell of where we've got to.
I have a couple of quick questions and then I'll turn it over to the board. When you look at some of the limitations for fertilization in schools versus just a general rec field, do you think there's some long-term fertilization options with those restrictions that we can make work? Or do you think maybe finding some different solutions where we have more general? So if you could think of if there'd be maybe a more general. I have some people that have come to me with some other solutions for fertilization that we can get around some of those things. So I'm wondering, within the requirements for schools versus other ways, do you think there's long-term options there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question in a situation we face every day in this job, especially in Connecticut, where the regulations are pretty tight on what we call plant protection products. You know, so anything that has an EPA registration is generally not allowed to be used on facilities such as this.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we have to find alternatives. We have to find solutions. So there are often solutions in, you know, for instance, just picking the right types of grass. You know, grasses that are more resistant to drought, more resistant to wear and tear, need less water, and that's always something that we're looking for anyway. Then there's different types of fertilizers, of nutrition. You can go an organic approach.
Mm-hmm.
We suggest a mix of organic and synthetic fertilizers that, again, fall within the restrictions, so we're fine with that. And the reason we say that is because with organics, it sounds like a really great idea, but the reality of it is sometimes is that with organics, as we say, you open the door to everything.
Right.
So we will basically grant life to everything at that point.
Right.
Weeds, grubs, everything come in with that. So we sort of don't want too much of the weeds and the grubs because they can be very, you know, very detrimental to what we're trying to achieve. But yeah, I mean, there's many different approaches that we can take. And in fact, you don't have this in your packet tonight, but I can share this with you. But something that Bill asked us to look at straight away was to try and see if we could start carrying out some kind of maintenance to the field based on analysis. So we've done that, and we're using very good quality nutrition that isn't detrimental to the environment, or it doesn't, you know, hit any restriction issues. So we've already started that process for now, just to give the field something, because they were in a pretty poor condition.
Yeah, right.
Sorry to say that. I don't mean that disrespectful.
No, we're well aware.
But yeah, and, you know, and again, we're not looking at it as a sales professional grounds managers at the minute. We're
Right.
looking at it, all right, what does the school need? So for us, it's a good balance of nutrition. Also, we do what we call soil conditioning
Mhm.
with certain products, which are more actually the organic type products. They have a lot of organic material in them. So they're really good at helping condition the soil the way we want, the good active growth, for good drainage, and also in some cases to retain some moisture where we might need it. It's okay saying that it's wet at the minute. We know that. We've had a lot of rain over the last few weeks. Now it's drying out. Now we're in a position we might want to retain some of that moisture. So some of what we call the top dressings that we may suggest will go forward, you know, for your plant. They may be dressings that retain a little bit of the moisture, but we're controlling. In the past, you have no control on it, but it's just what's in the soil.
Right.
So now we know what it is, know your soil. Now we can design the right material to make sure that it drains when it should, holds moisture when it should, and it definitely sustains the performance turf that we literally just planted, although sadly some of it was washed away with the heavy downfalls, but it's there. We we do what we call slit seeding, so we
Yep.
slice it in. So it's protected to some degree in the soil.
Perfect. Thank you. Chet, did you have some questions?
Yeah, I guess my first question would be, in terms of the irrigation, is it possible to put in the irrigation prior to having the field treatments that you're talking about done? Or is that something that we need to wait and do a field add irrigation, do a field add irrigation? If we were able to do something like stagger our field processes, but want to have the irrigation in place so that we're able to take care of that, is it going to interfere with your process of being able to come in and strip the fields down?
No, this is the great thing. All of the operations that are in the recommendations would not interfere with the irrigation. So the irrigation should go in first. That should be the first step that we'd like to take. Then we would actually probably irrigate some of the fields anyway before we start the work, because we don't want the fields too dry. Because the operation, it will do the job, but it will create a lot of damage to the soil structure. So actually the best condition to work that type of soil is when it's a little bit damp. So we actually would use the irrigation first. We would dampen the soil down to sort of 2 inches. And then all of the operations that follow that, all of these, rehabilitation operations, greater level of success.
And that the irrigation process that you were looking at, is that using the tank? We had previously been told that there were tanks that were present on the fields that were accessible and had levels of water that could be used for irrigation. Is that the irrigation process that you were referencing when you talk about your irrigation?
Yeah, the key thing for us is as we call it, the water source. So whether it's a well or wells, or whether it's a mains, or whether it's some kind of retention ponds that hold moisture, or retention, be it retention chambers that hold moisture, it sort of doesn't really matter to us as long as whatever's there can hold enough moisture to be able to use on the field. On average, we need, it may sound alarming this, but it's actually not a lot of water. We need about 27,000 gallons per week for an athletic field. Now that isn't something, that's not actually not.
That's a singular field. That would be like the soccer field uses that much.
Yeah. And that's a sort of what we call high use times. So when we've got a lot of usage on fields, obviously those fields in good condition, then we would need to have that kind of moisture available. Now we can have less, but it just means we can do less. But the idea of installing the irrigation system would be automated, done up with a smartphone. So nobody needs to worry about that headache while coming down and switching the clocks and turning them on like we used to do in grounds manager years ago. And what we do there is we have total efficiency at that point. If there are any issues with that irrigation system, we'll alert the smartphone holder, and then you can switch it off from the smartphone. So not only do we get the efficiency and effectiveness of the water from the point of view of accuracy onto the field, we also get that efficiency and effectiveness of being able to maintain and only use what we need. And we're very careful with only using what we need. It's a very precious commodity, wherever it comes from.
Oh, can I just follow up on that? Sorry. So to me, 27,000 gallons seems like a lot. But do we know, I guess to kind of follow up, or maybe I missed it, do we know that our wells can handle what's already there?
I don't know that just yet.
Okay.
That would probably be another study we can do, or certainly, we would suggest that you hire an irrigation contractor and consultant to look at that. And we can do that as well. We have those people on team.
Mhm.
But either way, one of us has to go out there and sort of study that
Right.
and understand. But it's not something that we cover in this. This is more related to, what do we find in general with the condition of the soils, with the condition of the surfaces.
Because I would assume our next steps now are to get pricing on what steps we decide we want to take. So then we would have to go to start looking at the irrigation as an option. I know we have done that in the past and they were fairly confident we could tap into the old wells, but we would have to confirm that, then we would have to decide what, do we want to do what surface rehabilitation and then get pricing for that? Is part of the service that you provided, would you do the RFPs? Write
Yep.
the RFPs for
Yep.
us for that? Okay,
We,
okay. And then you also
Yeah.
could bid out the work as well. Is that
yes,
correct?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
we normally, what we would normally do when we help, clients such as yourself is we take care of all what we call the scope of work or the specifications that go in the bid. Obviously, it would still be your official paperwork that would accompany that. But we would write that so we know then that when you get bids back, it's an apple to an apple, not apple to an orange. And, we would help with contractor walkthroughs so that they can come and see what they're. We really sort of push on that being, mandatory
okay,
because we don't like contractors that just look at Google Earth.
right,
They really have no concept of what they're looking at. No matter how good.
Okay.
We work with some great contractors in our industry, but we still make them come and look at every site before they put a bid. And then we get accurate bid. But we then at the time list of the bid. So we can support you all the way through that process to the
Great.
point that you say yes or no to they said.
okay,
We like to do that because we know exactly what we write for you.
sure.
And no disrespect to anybody that might have already written bids elsewhere, but this is very particular, so we make sure we write.
No, we absolutely appreciate that. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay,
Sorry.
No
I,
problem.
on the opposite side of the irrigation aspect with the drainage piece of things, I was just curious, because I know like on a soccer field to be able to do sand stripping and things like that is probably a pretty consistent thing that will give consistent drainage across it. And I'm curious just because I know that our baseball field infield is one of the most difficult spots in terms of water drainage. Is there enough that we can do to a space like that that's going to actually allow for the drainage? Or is there a separate style of drainage that we really need to look for those?
No, again, this is the beauty of what we call the sand banding or sand sliving. It's so effective in areas such as that, the problem that you have with your soils is they're not terrible soils, but they're heavily compacted. They've not really been what we call worked on over the years. They've not really been aerated regularly. They haven't had conditioning carried out to them. So if we carry out the conditioning and then we get the sand sliving in the right places, then it really will. It's literally, it's
Even in a space enclosed by clay, like an infield. Okay,
Yeah.
that was just one of my concerns with the idea that it was enclosed by clay, the idea that it would not be able to have enough access to it, but that.
Yeah, no, it's, we've never had any major issues with that in the past. There are odd times when we might suggest putting a perimeter drain in, just simply, certainly around the backstop area, but usually there is a lot of moisture that doesn't sort of drain down quite easily through clays. But I think one of the things we want to look at with you with this is the infields are going to be rebuilt as part of this process. So rebuilding them correctly is not a huge job, but it's a specific process. And then, they're graded correctly, so everything then will run off in the right direction. And then that will be picked up by sand slits as it comes across. So if you can look at it this way, when we put these slits in the ground, we don't put them in with the way the water would drain across the field. We put them across so that as the water runs down the field, every 6 inches, 7 inches that's hitting the slit where the water is accessing. The good thing about that is we don't have an overload on any of the slits. So we don't have too much water in one, all the others dry. It's a very consistent sort of hit patterns that water sheds across the surface. So it's very, very effective. We've seen fields that have been literal swamps that are now some of the best field conditions. It's a real danger.
And just one other, timing wise, is it a fall process that we're looking for seeding? Is that really what we need to do?
Absolutely, and the biggest issue that we have with the seeding is that we will literally have, mostly soil as you would look at it. When you get closer, you'll see a lot of grass that still exists, but it's mostly soil. So we don't have pesticides as a support mechanism for us to keep the weed population down while the seed is germinating, establishing. So we tend to do it at times of the year when the seed can germinate quickly, which is usually end of August through September, and when most of the annual weeds are coming to the end of the growth cycle. So they're actually dying off at most of the annual varieties. Some perennials that are kind of like, but usually if we graze more beforehand, we take a lot of that away. So, but yeah, fall is going to be the essential time to do these types of operations.
And do we need to keep people off it even beyond that 10 to 12 weeks? Or is that at the end of that 10 to 12 weeks, you could be on it daily and it's functional?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we would try and time it is that, yes, you would lose the fall spot. See, we can't find another window that works easily. We could start to do it right about now, but that's only where we would have pesticide usage as one tool for us. Without that, we wouldn't suggest that because we would probably weed ridden by the time.
And is the pesticide issue because of the regulation for it being a school property?
Yeah.
But if it was a rec field, for example, then you wouldn't have a pesticide issue. All right, perfect. Thank
Within
you.
reason, I mean, there's still maybe covenants that towns have themselves, like a voluntary covenant that they don't want to use
Right.
pesticides. But yeah, it's really wherever the school site. We accept it. The irony is that knowing these chemicals and having been involved with them for 40 years, the safest thing that you
Right,
can ever use.
they are safe, yeah.
But I understand the hesitance that for people that don't understand how they work, what they do. But ultimately, if we can see at the end of August, start of September, we have the least weed, contamination at that point. We normally see our seed get out the ground pretty quickly, as we say, and germinate, and then it will mature. And then it's going to go into its winterization, where it's going to go down. And then it comes out in the spring, ready for your spring sports. So you lose one, sadly, season, but you're gaining spring season where the water will be draining much better through that winter. Yes, we didn't have that much snow compared to previous winters, but we still had a lot of rain, a lot more rain this winter. And that was probably more in some respects than having snow cover. I would have preferred a snow cover. And I'm from England, and we don't get snow. We have one snowplow in the whole of England, so believe me, yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to follow up a little more about the grub control because that does seem to be a really huge issue and the other more insect-like pests and stuff. So you're saying that essentially that would be taken care of through the pesticide usage, but also if we increase the water, that should help with the grub control. I'm thinking more long-term, like how do we make sure that that's
Yeah, so we work on, or we try and work on what we call a prevention rather than cure. Cure is often chemical, and sometimes it's necessary. We try and create the right growing conditions that grubs don't. So by conditioning our soils, that's what now, if we get the microbial activity working to the level that we want, then we've got a very healthy soil and a very healthy plant that can then, to some degree, withstand grub activity. So that's the first thing we do. We try and make it inhospitable for the grub. We make it drain well. We make it dry out well. We make it warm up quickly. So they're all things that grubs really don't want in reality. And then there are products that we can use that are organic in their nature that will help control grubs as well. And they're not even registered through to it. But there are some products available that we can actually use, to help that process as well. And then really the third step is, as we've talked about a little bit, it's efficient, effective water. so that we keep the plant healthy, keep the soil hydrated, but not overly wet, overly dry. We get what we call a localized dry spot if we get it too dry. So you'll have seen that all of last summer when it was dry. You've probably seen you could have poured water on the field and it probably just could have run anywhere it could, but not infiltrate. And it's what we call a water pinch, stopping the water from being able to penetrate it out. So if we get all of the right growing conditions, as we call it, in line in the right order, then we'll have far less activity for us in the future. But at the moment, they're having free feast because there's nothing we're doing that deters them. You know, we're not even saying to them, you can only eat between 12 type thing. It's like eat whenever you want. And of course, the grub activity we're seeing now is they're going to start sort of heading down, ready to give birth. Then we're going to have the next one called instar comes through. So we really want to get on top of that as quickly as we can. Now, granted, it's not going to be right at this moment. We're going to have to plan that out. So we're going to have to accept there's going to be a little bit of damage, a little bit of pain for us while we prepare, while we put irrigation in, while we then get to maybe the first rehabilitation of the fields. So it'll take a little bit of time to put all in place. You don't need to rush them. And sort of know where we were before to do the assessment, if you
Right. Are there any other questions? Phil, do you have any questions? Stephanie's on. Okay. Steph, do you have any questions, or Phil? All right, not seeing any. Do you guys have any other questions?
Oh, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ian. Well, thank you so much for coming out. It was really great information, and we'll have a quick discussion on it. We already voted to move forward for RFP on the first phases that you had suggested, so we're looking forward to moving in that direction.
We always worry about this, but my
Yeah.
trepidation isn't coming down and having to answer questions or
Yeah.
my trepidation is that I know that I as I say, I'm the presenter of the bad news on it. So I try not to, but I am. But
It is something that we've put off for quite some time. We are aware that they are not in great shape, but I'll be interested to hear a little bit from Ellen when we wrap up here as to what her take would be on it. But I really do appreciate it. And I think we're all very excited to be able to do something to move forward. We have a great facility over there, so we'd like to back it up with some beautiful fields.
yeah,
so.
you've got some great fields, from a structural
Yep.
the layout.
I
Perfect,
apologize. I
thank
have
you.
just one more quick things.
Absolutely.
In terms of the irrigation, how long are fields down for irrigation install? Is that something that,
On a site, if we were doing the whole site, let's say, so all of the fields, it would probably take about 2 to 3 weeks.
and then they're immediately playable
Yep.
following that, even that's not a dig up thing where you have to take out pieces, or it is and it just fills right in?
No, I mean, all the pipe work would have to be trenched in or
Right.
dragged in. It just depends, what the contractor thinks is best. But I think it's going to have to be trenched because some of those soils are what we call bony. There's a lot of stone in some of those soils, so they're probably going to have to be trenched. But yeah, once they're trenched in and not coming back out, and we'll certainly make sure that they're trenched in the right depth, which is about 16 inches deep in most cases, unless there's ledge under there that we don't know about. But about 2 to 3 weeks, I'd say. Most contractors are pretty quick and very efficient with their time. Because their time is their money.
Right,
So
right,
the
right.
minute they can get onto another project, better. So, but we make sure to take.
Thank you. Thanks. And Troy, did
All
you
right.
have anything you want to add?
Ian, just thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. I know it's helped me just to hear your explanation, even though it was a detailed report. And I just wanted to point out, and I don't know if everybody's met Randy Rumwell, who is here, who's our facilities director, and he's here to hear Ian. And because Randy is, when you mentioned, follow up and maintaining, Randy is a major part of that.
Yeah, we need to wrap this guy in cotton wool if we can. It's going to protect him. 'cause,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, no, we
most
want
of
it,
what we've
we-
said in here requires him as much.
we
as
want it to be a
humanly
sustainable
Mm.
function, whatever it is, it's got to be doable, right?
And
Right.
just very quickly, I apologize. We may have incorrectly called the elementary school, the middle school in our report, so apologies for that. If
Oh, yeah,
that-
right.
if you get to that point, read it, and think, oh, we don't have one, or we do have one. It's just an oversight. So,
No, I think we caught that too. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you very
next time,
much.
Stop giving me a hard time.
All right, no problem. Thanks again. Have a nice night. All right, thanks. Appreciate it. And then before we move on, Ellen, did you have anything you wanted to add as far as preferences on if we were to move forward on this timing, anything like that? I mean,
Yes, I said, moving forward, I think, obviously not, I don't want to shut down any fields, but I think if that's what we have to do, we have to do it. My biggest concern is our baseball field. Been a concern of mine for ever since I've been here. It holds water. It holds water for a very long time. So we're not talking one game, we're talking like a week. So if we can get that figured out, I think that would be ideal. And then our soccer field has the direct opposite issue where it gets too dry. We come in after a summer and it's like straw. We're both extremes with our fields. So, and I will say a shout out to Randy. He hasn't been here that long, but he's doing a fantastic job out there. And I do appreciate how he is out there every day. We communicate every day about what's going on out there. So that has been a big change for me as the athletic director. Moving forward, to have that same working relationship with him. Shutting down the field for the fall. And we're talking 16 games that I'd have to move because it's 8 girls home games, 8 homeboys games, and then we have the middle school games and they play probably about 5 each. So we're looking at 26 games that I'm gonna have to find someplace else to go to. Is it ideal? No. Have I done it before?
you're really good at it, Ellen.
No. Thank you. I know a lot of people, I can call them babies. It hurts my heart to be able to have to tell our seniors that they're not going to be able to pay home for their senior season. And we did that with our basketball and we brought in the gym, the gym and everything. It was hard. I coached that back in '95 and we had to do it. It's hard. I mean, it's hard on our kids. It's hard on our families. But if you can promise me in the long term that it will be beautiful, I can make things work. You know me. But I guess if you think that shutting down that fall field, that we can get that baseball field up and that softball field up for that following spring, and we're talking just one season down, I'll do my best to make it work.
Yes, absolutely. Could you mind going to the mic? We have a
Sorry.
couple of people online. They can't hear well.
Yeah, it just occurred to me that, and I absolutely agree with that because we thought that when we were putting these things together, we know that the difficulty. One thing we could do, I don't know whether it would be totally effective, but we could apply to the state for an emergency order to be able to apply herbicides through the growing season.
Mhm.
So for instance, if we would normally do the work when we've got the window, we would normally start the work right about now, right about the graduation time. And then normally we would grow the field in ready for use in the fall.
Right.
And we hit that window consistently over the years when we've done it. My fear is that if we don't have herbicides as possible, we may not even need them, but if we don't have them, then we're open, it's open, war out there type of
Right.
wait. But we could apply to the state and ask for an emergency order. It would have to come through yourselves, but we could help you. We have an environmental lawyer and scientist on our team, and he could write it the right way to then apply, and then we could see if that they may offer just through the growing period, they may allow us to use one or two chemicals if we give them all the chemicals with the ability.
Awesome. All
Now,
right.
now, if we were to consider the idea of doing baseball and softball fields in the fall, just thinking out ahead, if we were to look for this fall to be able to, if we were to look to do irrigation over the summer,
Yep.
do fall fields in terms of baseball and softball, so that coming into the spring, those fields would be ready, they would be draining, we'd be able to play in the spring with them. We don't have people playing on them in the fall other than middle school soccer. Is middle school soccer? But maybe if we move middle school soccer to rec for the year or something similar, no, okay.
The rec field is worse than our.
But middle,
Sorry
But
to say that.
for, but for a year, I guess I'm trying to,
I'm just saying middle school soccer, you could find homes for possibly. Yes.
It's, again, we have we have a 5 game schedule for middle school. 5 of them are already away. If I have to, I'll start making phone calls. I personally don't think the rec is really a great option up there. It's rocky. It has to have its own field study, I think. Sorry. It's just, I know how it was when I was there, and I don't know that I don't know. There's a lot going on. up
no,
there.
I'm just trying to think about least amount of impact if we were able to.
Yeah.
don't
And we
wanna,
would
like-
leave that up to you to determine,
Yeah.
Ellen, how that would work
Yeah, and
best.
the problem is we use the outfield section of our high school baseball and softball field right now for that smaller size. They use a smaller size field. We don't use the full soccer field like we do for the high school. We use it on the minimum size. So it's 100 by 60. We kind of wedge it in the outfield of our softball field. We wouldn't be able to do that, obviously, if they're working on the softball, baseball field. So I would try to find something. Maybe the rec would be an option. I would like to look at something else before I did that, but it wouldn't be here. Again, it's not going to be on Wheeler property. We don't have the space for it right now. There's beautiful grass they're planting over here, but that means the soccer ball's gonna be rolling into Main Street, and it's not ideal because it's dirt and it's gonna have grass on it, but it's also got no fencing or anything, so we're gonna be chasing the ball down Main Street. I don't know, that's a great idea. So we have the areas. I'll figure it out if I have to. If it's for the good of the.
But if we can get you a baseball and softball field for next
Yeah.
spring,
That's-
that would
that's
be where you're.
that's two sport. Yeah, I'd like to give it a try. Our baseball field right now, and Troy had asked me a couple weeks ago where I thought our biggest issue is, and it's our baseball field right now. We lose weeks of games, and then it all drains to our softball field, so it's sitting in the outfield. And so that game gets canceled. The dirt part of the field looks great, but if you go out in the outfield, the ball lands there, it's just plunking there. It's wet. It's like a puddle. And like I said, it's like so wet, and then the soccer field is so dry. I wish I could just figure out a way to get the water off of that and just put it down on our soccer. This might be the way.
All right.
I'll figure it out.
All right.
You do what's right for our field. I would love our fields to look as nice as our building. I would love our
Yes.
people to come into us saying, wow, what a beautiful building you have, and look at your fields. Our fields used to be amazing. Maybe that hope faded. I think with the proper maintenance, we can keep it going. It's gonna keep those fields beautiful. It'd be nice. The nicest picture ever is when you walk out the back part of the gym and you see all the green fields and you see all of them playing. You see like a lacrosse game, like a softball game going on, and a baseball game going on all at once. It's a beautiful sight. You walk out there and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is awesome." And in the fall, if you see cross country and soccer and everything else going on, it's really kind of amazing. It's beautiful when it's green.
Right. All right. Well, thank you, Ellen.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Ian. Have a nice night. Randy, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. Yes. Yeah. All right, excellent. All right, thank you so much. So unless you guys had any other discussion, I think we just move forward with the RFP process that we went through last week or last meeting.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea and I really want to do this, but I am nervous about the cost and kind of align because we took things from our budget. We've put them into the non-lapsing. We have other things that we do want to touch upon on the non-lapsing. I just want to get some pricing first before.
Well, that would be the RFP
Yeah,
process.
no, I understand that,
Yeah.
but now we're also adding the RFP about the contractor for the irrigation. Like I'm just seeing more and more.
Well, that was part of what we voted for last time.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I'm just stating my concerns
Okay.
that,
And
I'd
I
like to be
appreciate that. I do think we need to take a look at this pricing. This has been something that has been top of mind for us for years and years and years, and they've been heavily neglected. So we do have money in that account right now, so I think this would be the time to look. So if everybody's still comfortable moving forward with what we decided to at least get pricing on that. Okay. Anybody else? Comment on that?
Christine, we're just gonna go forwards getting prices, but nothing to initiate that,
Right,
correct?
we need the RFPs before we make any decisions.
I understand. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, we need to approve minutes. We have a lot of them.
I guess the question would be if anybody has specific issues on any of the minutes in particular. And if there aren't issues on the minutes, I would say we consent agenda them as a single motion.
I'm fine with doing
So
that.
move,
Go through 'em all.
second, sorry,
We're just
Well,
making sure there's no discussion.
Yeah,
and then we'll make
it
a
would just be
motion.
whether or not
sure.
had individual issues with any of the minutes. Then I would make a motion to approve the February 8th, February 22nd, March 1st, March 8th, March 13th, March 22nd, March 29th, April 3rd, and April 26th, 2023 minutes. God, we have a lot of meetings.
2 a month.
March
Yeah.
5 in March, yeah.
budget. It was all
Can I get a
budget
second?
meetings.
Second,
Brian seconded. He beat you to it, Phil. Sorry.
Ah.
Any discussion at all on the minutes? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed and abstain. Reports.
Yeah, happy May.
Mhm.
I can't believe it's already May. Schools are quite, the places of activity now. We got a play coming up that we're rehearsing today, Little Mermaid, and we got baseball going on, lacrosse, we got, it's a lot, softball, and a lot's happening. So the kids, I'm sure next time will report all that stuff, but it's an exciting place to be with the warm weather and you see the kids outside. PTO did a real nice event called Day of Awesomeness for the kids. People had a really nice time. I even got my picture with the lion. So anyway, that's not what I meant to say. The only thing I really want to talk about is I want to hand you this, just so you have it. This is a State Department of Education document off their webpage. And you may have heard that it has mandated reading programs, K through 3. And there are 7 that have been identified as meeting the criteria. They had a big committee that looked at all these programs, and basically they're saying you must pick in one of these programs and implement it. Or you can fill out a big waiver and you can, argue that you're going to do something else. And we don't know how the waivers get approved or if they do and all that. So as of right now, I had responded that we need another year to study it. Because it's supposed to be implemented next year. So I was going to say, oh, we're going to pilot something and we're going to, make sure we have the money because we didn't necessarily budget the money for it, because we didn't know what these things cost. However, due to the good work of Mr. Salino and his teachers and their ELA committee that's met several times now, and their reading specialists, and they've actually identified the program that they want, and it's on the list. So what I propose, it's this Horton Mifflin Horcourt Into Reading program. By the way, a surrounding town is also considering and likely to implement that program, Preston. So we're not the only ones picking that program. We think we'd do it K through 5, because it goes K through 5. And then there's another program called Into Literature, which starts, same company, but starts in grade 6 and would use that program at grade 6. Mr. Salino got some quotes from the company. And what I would like to do is have Mr. Salino and maybe some of his teachers come to our next board meeting and present this program to you, because this is a good opportunity for the board to approve curriculum. You know, it's a program. It's not exactly what we call curriculum today in this day and age, but I think the intention of boards of ed approving curriculum is to approve major purchases like this. And we're looking at, if we have the professional development with it, we're looking at $32,000, which is less than I thought it was going to be, actually. I thought it was going to be more.
I find that interesting, because I just listened to the presentation at our Board of Ed for this program. I thought it was.
We knew how to negotiate in North Stonington.
I just have a quick question, Troy. When this came up
How about
a while back, I thought that we were already doing one
Okay,
of
so
the
yes, all right,
programs.
so so McGraw-Hill Education Wonders. Okay, but that's the 2020 version. Okay, we were not doing that upgraded version. We were doing an older version that does not meet the criteria. And we were implementing portions of it. What?
I said, of course we would, because, you know, why would we actually? It's like, oh, you did, no, just update.
Well, we were only using it in grades 2 and 3 and partially using it, like parts of it. So it wasn't really a full implementation, and we weren't that particularly pleased with it. And when we looked at all the options, Mr. Salino and his committee, extensive ELA committee, really felt that the inter-reading program was better. And it might actually save us money in terms of the benchmark testing. Right now, we use STAR and IXL 3 times a year to see where the kids are. Well, we might be able to get rid of some of those programs, because this program has a version of that for reading. So it could be an efficiency thing. So what I'm proposing is we have a presentation at the next meeting, so y'all can understand it better. And if you're convinced, then you would then approve that, and then we look to purchase it. Now, here's the really good part. Bill he gave you a report with several months financials, and he wrote a little narrative. And he talked about having some money at the end of the year, like between 30 and 50,000. That's after we buy a few things that we're looking to buy right now, this program being one of them. So we feel like we have the money to buy this program if you approve it, with not non-lapsing, just the Board of Ed money, and would still have the $30,000 to $50,000 at the end of the year, we believe. So that's the only thing I really wanted to present tonight in my report, because it's a big deal, but we can't make a decision tonight, obviously, because you guys don't really know about it.
So they'll present.
Well, I'm gonna try to get them to do that.
And just for my knowledge, because I don't do much with elementary in my background, what was the state's rationale for telling all schools in the state they have to use one of these 7 or 8 programs? Is it to help prepare students for a test, or is it actually going to
No,
help them with their reading skills overall?
It
Because
was
I,
a huge issue.
well,
they're all of these programs are directly aligned to what is called the science of reading. It's a kind of a new terminology that's very popular. And several of our teachers went to a lot of virtual workshops in science of reading. And so the rubrics that they use to assess these, the committee, the state committee, had a lot of science of reading concepts and seeing if these programs are hitting those. One of the major ones is phonics,
Mhm.
and kids match sound to symbol. You know, and that's actually teaching kids how to read, not how to
Right.
guess how to read. Which is
Right.
now, research says you actually have to teach them how to read, not how to guess. It used to be like, oh, guess within the context. Look at the picture. Is that a cat or a dog? You know, now the idea is less guessing and more like, can you actually figure it out and sound out the word?
Okay.
And that's phonics. So a lot of these programs are now heavily in phonics because that's what science of reading is saying. That's
Okay.
just one of the ideas. There's the science of reading has other parts too, like fluency, vocabulary, and all those parts of reading that kids need to focus on. So I'm actually very excited that Rob and his team was able to identify a program that they think would be really good. It's on the list. We wouldn't have to fill out the waiver, or I wouldn't have to ask for another extension. You know, I could say, oh, I already asked for the extension, but I could say, hey, you know what? We don't need it. We figured it out.
Okay, can I just ask for if we were not to need it from the state, because I know that there's a variety of lobbying groups that are fighting against the specificity of this reading program. If we were not to be forced to do this by the state, do you believe that do you believe that our administrative team and our curriculum people on this reading aspect would still want this program?
Yes. And I say that because we have lacked coherency or vertical alignment from grade to grade. And this would really increase that. Not just from grade to grade, but within grades even, to have a set of resources that are high quality resources for teaching reading. I think teachers they'd love to have that. And they, so and then the kids too, kind of get used to the routines of the program. And from year to year, it's not like switching from one thing to another thing. And it's, not that it's completely random right now. It's not. There's actually really great instruction going on. Obviously, our
Right.
scores are really high, and you've seen, what your kids bring home and everything. But this would provide that glue, that kind of coherency from grade to grade, and it just it's a real quality resource that it is not the only thing we'll use to teach reading, right? So.
No,
it's
I
kind of
just mean
reading
if we're going to
novels
spend the
and-
money on it, would we spend the money
I think we
on it anyway? If they tell us in 3 months, hey, you can pick any reading program, would this still be the one?
I believe it would.
Okay.
I believe it would, but that's a great question to ask the people who are implementing it, if they can come in the next meeting.
And how long is it good for? How long is the program good for? I mean, like, are we gonna find out 2
There is
years from now? that
there
it's
will
not?
be, okay, so we'll get that information when they come, because I don't have it
Okay,
off
thank
the
you.
top of my head. But that bigger price is for the first year implementation. It should be less the following years. We gotta find that out.
3 or 5 year.
Okay, maybe that's why the other town was higher.
So we'll hear from them when they can present, and we can find out, because I would like to know, like, usually there's how long is it good for, and
Yeah,
what
know
do we
there's
have
a-
to pay for
Yeah,
renewals?
there's an online version, there's some actual physical resources, which I think are consumables that would have to be purchased possibly each year, so we could look at all of that. They can bring the details of all those costs.
Thank-
That's all I really want to talk about tonight.
Okay, all right. I just had a couple quick things. We talked about the transportation study. We narrowed down a date that the three of us are gonna chat, so we're gonna talk in a couple of weeks. And then we'll have more on that. I did talk to, First Selectman Bob Carlson about the sheds behind the rec field. Those are actually owned and used by the volunteer fire department, so they are not available. And he didn't feel that it was viable for moving them if they were. Other than that, I just know there was the town meeting. We've moved to referendum. That's about where we're at right now for budget. And referendum is on the 15th.
Regarding the referendum, I just had a thought on that and I wanted to ask the board what they felt, and because I don't want to, get myself in trouble and, use a coffee analogy or something. So I would like people to remember that there is a referendum on Monday. And I'm a little hesitant to remind people myself, because, if it's fine with you, I mean, I can send out a K-Swift alert and people could get an email, and say, hey, by the way, there's a referendum on the 15th and polls are open from 8 AM to 8 PM. Period.
Yeah, as long as you don't ask them to support the budget, you can just.
I
be
can't
mindful.
say like,
Hey,
and
wrong.
that we could get a social worker and we could get a special ed teacher. I can't, I don't know if I can call back.
But yeah, you can absolutely remind them to come out and vote.
Okay, so, all right, so just so you know, then, all right, I'm getting you to agree to that. So if I get any headaches or phone calls over that, I can say the board authorizes, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
just
All right. 'Cause
again,
someone
keep
might
out
say
words like,
oh,
we
it's
can't
di-
say support the budget. We can't
Right.
say anything like
right,
that.
but I'm using district funds to remind people. I'm
What is
using
the
district-
cost?
The district, the funds are, the district pays for the Swift K-12 alert system.
Right, but it's not per message.
No.
Right? So it doesn't
It's
matter
not
how
per
many
message.
times
Yeah,
you
you're not
use
gonna
it.
have
So
it.
it's not,
Yeah,
it's not
you're
an
not gonna
expenditure of
Just one
funds.
message that's included in the
Right.
package.
Because most towns also put something out within it. And I mean, like, that's
Yeah,
a
it's
common
right.
process of
Yeah,
a
there are
reminder.
people who don't realize there's a referendum on Monday. There are a lot of people.
Many.
And I mean, and it
4,200.
could
Right.
go out in those email blasts that go out on Fridays from principals to say, remember.
Right, so what I could do is send one out on Friday,
Mhm.
and then I could send another one out on Monday morning.
Yep.
All right, I'll do that now. Text, email, phone call, text, email.
Yes, but in your voice, please.
Oh, the real voice.
Yes.
Okay, but my tone is gonna be like, please support the budget. I'm not saying the words, but the tone. They're gonna read it in the tone. So just know, I can't control it. Okay? We'll see how it comes out. All right. All right, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I wanted that support.
Thank you. We did get facilities and finance. We are gonna have a finance committee meeting prior to the next meeting. Bill will be here to go over these reports, so these are really kind of a first read. One thing I did want to, we have asked in the past, and he maybe just hasn't gotten to it. We would like to see an anticipated line in these reports. Because not everything is encumbered, so I like, it's really nice to see what's left over, but I'd like to see what's anticipated to be spent in each line. So that if we are having some savings somewhere, we know what line that's coming out of. And I know he's aware of that, so if you
Yeah.
could just pass that message to him again.
And I think he has a document like that.
I mean,
actually, that I
he should be able to just
gave him.
insert a column.
And
Right.
can I clarify, Troy, on his little narrative,
Yeah.
it says that they're projecting a year-end balance of 30 to 50,000 and that they are looking at a new elementary reading program to purchase if we have additional funds beyond that. You had said that
Well,
the reading program was already included in the,
It's not included in anything yet.
I thought that was what you had just.
what I
what you
said,
just-
yeah, right, it's a little contradictory possibly to what Bill had
Right.
written. She wrote that earlier last week.
Okay, so
Okay,
now
so now-
with the 30 to
Except we
50,
we
we
didn't have
also,
the quote for the reading program,
okay,
until like 2 days ago.
okay.
All right, so, that he wrote that before that. So now that I have the quote, I know, that we could very likely purchase that with with money now and still have the 30 to 50 at the end of the year. Okay, we didn't know how much the reading program was gonna be. I was thinking it was gonna be like 60, 80,000, something like that. I don't know why I was thinking that, but
But then if it was 30 to 50 and then we found out it's 32, does that mean we have -2 to 18 left? Or that's
No.
now with other numbers that come in, we would have had 30 to 50. Now we will still have 30 to 50, but we can also spend 32 on this program?
Yes. So so by reading, he's anticipating we might have about 80,000 left at the end of the school
Okay,
year. We have
that's-
enough to pay for the school, for the reading program if we need to and decide to move forward with that. And we may still have about $30,000 left,
yes.
30 to 50 left, depending on where things come
So
out.
kind of- and-
This is
and
only
these-
through
these other
April.
small Things that we're looking at,
Right.
getting. Like, you know, microphones for the elementary school,
Mhm.
that kind of thing, like. So we could probably get a few of those smaller items that are gonna make things more convenient next year.
Yeah, it's the lighting, not to bring this up again, but I want to
We
make
have the
sure
lighting. I have the lighting also.
in here.
I have the lighting as a possible expense.
Okay,
And Mr. Selena was able to give me that list
perfect.
just yesterday.
Perfect.
So
Okay,
it's on my list.
I don't want to forget about it.
It's on my list.
Is it okay for us to talk about that list now? I know at the last meeting, we talked about having that non-lapsing conversation.
Yeah.
But we didn't really want to talk non-lapsing until we could talk about the list because,
I'd like Bill to be here and I'd like the finance committee to go through that list first.
okay,
And that was kind of the plan for next month, for the next meeting at the end of the month.
okay, so we can't really have much of a non-lapsing discussion.
Well, we have the list of the non-lapsing things, so I think we can go through it if you'd like to,
Okay.
when
The
we
only-
get to that.
The only other thing I was gonna ask for, and I think that we talked about this before, I might be remembering it incorrectly, but when we get our monthly report from Bill, can we also get like an updated non-lapsing report? I know it won't always change month to month. But I think sometimes it might, and it would be really helpful to get an updated where we're at. I didn't see it in there. So I just went back and pulled whatever the most recent
March's,
one.
March
'cause it-
23rd.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't.
I don't
right.
think we've made
I don't think
any,
it's any change from then. That's probably why. But to have it, I don't see it as a problem.
I don't think we've spent anything since March
To
23rd.
have the-
yeah, and that's the one
report.
that had
Did,
your
does that mean the chair racks
consideration.
haven't gotten bought? Because the chair rack should have been bought.
And I think some checks were cut and signed between that and this. So it would change that number. I know it doesn't necessarily change our priority list. But some things have been purchased and I think it changes a
So
little.
we'll get
Yeah,
an
maybe it may
updated
have-
list.
It may change.
I would
Yeah,
love
so
it
it's
once
not
a month with
problem.
the financial. If that's possible.
All right, so we're gonna request the anticipated column, make sure we get a non-lapsing report with our financials. And then we'll have an updated report at the next meeting for the non-lapsing as well. And Bill will be at the meeting next Wednesday, at our next meeting, which will be really helpful too, to ask some questions. Just a couple of things on the financials, just to touch base for those that are listening in. He had mentioned that salaries, we should be spending probably most of what's in that line item. Everybody's kind of aware of that. Even though it's showing a 33% balance there, there's usually a balloon payment at the end of the year. Any other questions on that as kind of a first read? Maybe and if you think of any that you want to send over to Alex as the chair of the Board of Finance before the next meeting, that would be helpful as well. You can also send them to myself or to Bill directly. Just if you send them to Bill directly, if you don't mind CCing myself on it, then we know what those questions are and how to get the answers out to the entire board. No other questions on them at this point? Steph, did you have anything? You look like you're deep in thought there.
I did have some questions, but I realized that they're really questions. I thought Bill was gonna be here tonight to review these with us. So they're really questions that I think I need to ask Bill, so I'll send an email.
Okay. To the end of year projection, we just discussed that a little bit. And then we want to look at the non-lapsing. Did you have some things on the playground, Jamie?
Yeah, I have some updates. So I met with Troy and Rob. We took a walk around. We've highlighted some of the areas that potentially could use some more equipment. So I spent some time going through Game Time. They're who we used before. They currently have, they call it a grant funding. It's not really a grant. They have funny language about it. Essentially, you have to apply for this program, but they'll give you a discounted rate. That's what we did for when we purchased the big piece of equipment. So right now, what they have going on is this inclusive playground equipment funding match. So essentially, you have to say that you're going to put money in, but they'll provide you with a steeply discounted rate. Now, some items are 40% discounted, some are 45. It depends, and I'm working with the company to try to get some more clear pricing, but they'll do up to 25% or 25,000. So I highlighted several pieces of equipment, especially for the pre-KK. We're in desperate need of some equipment there, and that inclusive playground equipment would be really good for that age group. I don't want to go into too much detail because I can give you a PowerPoint presentation, but I'm kind of waiting a little bit. But essentially, we are out of code on some things, like where the swings are in terms of where the mulch is. We could fix that issue. Nobody's mentioned it. Nobody's really called us on it, but it's coming, that they're going to be upset about it. The swing is too close to the edge. So basically a kid could trip over the pole and hit their head on the edging. So we could bump that out and get another piece of inclusive playground equipment there. And then there are a few pieces that are improperly installed that need to be rearranged in both the pre-K and in the big kid playground that could allow for more of this inclusive playground to be added. And then we also looked at shade covering for the benches. They are not quick at getting me a quote. So I'm still working on that. I'd have to then apply to this. And, I don't want to be making these decisions by myself. So I'd like, maybe, I don't know if we could have a subcommittee, maybe somebody could sit with me and we could walk through it and make sure that I'm not making all these decisions.
Now, did you walked through this with Rob and everything, and he wanted all these same pieces? Is that how that came about?
Yeah,
or-
we talked about it and he seemed pretty favorable of this inclusive equipment. Most of it is like climbing pieces that were indicated by the teachers that they really wanted these climbing pieces, and that's what these inclusive pieces are.
And can more than just the pre-K and K play on them? Because like
No.
pre-K is only there
Uh,
part-time.
I believe they do pre-K, K and 1. It's only for 2 to 5 year olds. It's really important that we keep those kids on that playground
Okay.
at that age group, because we have the bigger playground that can accommodate the bigger kids.
Okay, and then who installed the equipment wrong? Can we go back to those people and have them install it correctly?
Well, not me. I didn't install.
No, I know, but who,
No, I know. I mean,
I'm just saying who
I'm-
did the installation initially?
I'm meaning that I wasn't there to make sure that it was put in properly, or
Yeah.
Beth Grimsey. I believe it was this other company, American Playground, that put it in improperly. I don't know if they would move it. There was a lot of confusion from what I hear, even though with directions, they still had some trouble. So I think if we were to do this and we could fix it, and I'm certainly willing to be involved, but I don't want to be the main. I need more help and people to kind of double check my math and things like that. So maybe facilities would want to be involved. We also have pieces of equipment that need to get installed. And when I spoke to the Game Time rep, is who helped us the first time install, I asked him for a quote for the installation as well. And usually we can sweet talk them into installing a few other items and
Right.
maybe fixing.
Do you know who? I guess I'm totally with you. We should fix what was installed
Mhm.
incorrectly, but tend to want to go back to the company that installed it incorrectly to say, install it correctly at no charge. Why would we pay again to install something that was done wrong?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can. I don't know who would be the person to contact about that. I don't remember exactly who, because this was after the PTO group left.
I was gonna say, I think the important thing is this was post playground
Mhm.
committee, post PTO process, once it was turned over to the school.
Mhm.
And then our grounds person.
I think it was mostly the grounds.
Yeah, I'm not trying to point fingers, and I'm more than happy to make a couple of phone calls. I'm just trying to think of who do I contact? There's nothing in file of this American Playground place or anything. We don't know anything about them or.
I can go back through my email. I don't even know if I coordinated this. We might need to contact Rob and see if he remembers the coordination
Okay.
of this install. But I think what's going to have to happen is because it was improperly installed in the wrong zone, essentially, they put the buck about, which is a little seesaw thing. They put it too low and they put it smack in the middle of one of our bigger zones instead of moving it to a place where we could eventually expand and put a bigger piece of equipment. So the idea is we would pick it up and move it to an area that's a little less highly trafficked and then put the bigger inclusive piece over there. And that was, again, I met with Beth Kermsey as well, and she kind of advised me on how we could do this, but we would definitely need something. So the other problem with this inclusive funding is that it's, of course, has an expiration date of June 30th. So I'm getting the quote. I have all the pieces picked out. And so in order to get that match, it would have to be ordered by June 30th.
Do you think you could have that for the next meeting, the pricing on that?
Yeah, but I would like some input on, like, we have some options here and depending on like, how much do we want to spend and.
So up to 25,000 and that's about 40% match.
Yeah,
Is what you said.
my rough estimate would be, we probably would have about 60,000 that we could spend from the board is what my rough estimate would be. The problem is I don't know the labor cost right now. I'm assuming it's about 40%. But I'd like to get a more pinpoint, a stronger number on the labor for install. And then, so another, for example, why I'd like some input is there's a piece that falls under this inclusive grant. It's like a skateboard, but it's 10 times more than the original idea that I had, which was like more of a balance beam that you can move. But the balance beam is not from Game Time, it's from this American Playground. So you then have to buy it from there. So it could end up being a little bit more pricey. And so I guess I would like to have some input from somebody else to kind of think about what our options are and how much we want to spend. And I mean, I can give you a rough estimate of how much I think it would be. That would be including shipping and all the pieces. There's about, I think I picked out about 5 of them in total, and then installation would between 60 and 75,000. And then the grant on top of that, the match.
So the match would come out of that 60 to 70.
Yeah, so in the application, we would say that we're going to give 60 or 70,000, and then they would
Give
say,
us 40% of that. or
well,
whatever
they're
that
gonna
would
give
be.
us a discounted rate. But we just have to show that we're contributing. I mean, the other route is we could certainly go to the PTO again and ask them to maybe buy a piece once we get the pricing. The rec has donated in the past. I don't know if they'd be interested again, but we have other ways of going about this, but I think we need some more input.
Does anybody else have any input? Jamie? On how much you'd be comfortable spending or what you'd like to see spent or?
I mean, I think $60,000 is is not a bad number, in the idea that we have a whole playground that we haven't really contributed a whole ton to. And so the idea that we would contribute those extra pieces for that 60,000, I don't have a problem with that.
Anybody else? Lisa, Steph? She's looking for input from the board.
Are you looking for someone to like work on it with you, or
I'll take anything. Yes.
I'd be willing to spend some time on it
Okay.
with you, to go over and maybe prioritize pieces. I think, 60,000 seems like a lot of money at this point, but I don't know what I'm looking at either. I haven't seen anything. So I'd be happy to meet with you.
I think that's sort of my feedback as well. I mean, it's just a number because I don't really know what we're talking about, and without understanding, Troy, what your list looks like and where we're at with all this other stuff, it's hard to find like a home for that. So I feel like the number is super important because we have to figure it in. But I'm glad you're looking into it, and I'm glad you're willing to sit with it, and awesome that Rob's involved, because at some point you're gonna have to make a decision in order, and it sounds like sooner rather than later.
I would also say that I think as much as I appreciate your help, Lisa, we also need like a professional to sit with us as well. Maybe, like I said, somebody from facilities or something that could kind of help us think about that in the space. And
Like Randy.
yeah, Randy would be fine. Or, if there's somebody else that's also interested, maybe a teacher as well, who'd like to be involved in that conversation.
When I think just so people understand, I mean, my wife was involved with the a set of other people with the helping of setting up this first playground. Playgrounds are really expensive. Playground equipment is really expensive. $60,000 seems like a huge amount of money until you start seeing that a medium-sized structure is $45,000. If we're able to get the match, I know that was one of the only reasons that the process worked the last time, to be able to get the quantity of equipment, which people use a lot. I mean, you see it during the school day, the kids are all out there on it. You see it following Run Club, all the kids run over and they're playing on it. You see it after school on the weekends and all of these other times. It's a constantly used space. And I do think, I guess I would just advocate for the fact that it's an investment that gets a lot of use. There are a lot of children's feet and hands on these, and they're building these skills. And it's another piece that fits into that whole idea of improved physical activity for our kids out there, because that climbing and that jumping and all of those things are all of those pieces that fit into our physical fitness now. So,
I understand. I'm not, against playground. I'm pro playground. I haven't been over there. And so it's hard for me to envision what $60,000 would look like over there in the first place. I don't know what we have, do we really need more, or do we just want more? Like, I would like to make that determination. And I understand things are very expensive, playground equipment. But where we're looking at the fields and stuff, to Steph's point, I'd really like to see the whole list and the priorities and just see how much we have,
And I have a PowerPoint ready to go. I just really wanted to nail down the pricing first. And I don't mean to bore us with like, well, we're going to move this here, and because that's this foot zone, and like, I can certainly go through that if you're interested. And I think we've been really hearing it from the teachers, especially on that pre-K playground, that it's bare bones. I mean, oh, of course, anytime. I mean, I do love a good PowerPoint, but I will happy to show you.
well, and I think if anyone has the opportunity to see it when a group of kids is out there, because they run 2 grades of recess at the same time. So like the second and third graders are out there, which is putting 100 kids onto a playground area that isn't set up to fit 100 kids.
And I appreciate that, Chet, but I want to be very clear that we're talking about pre-K through 1 playground equipment that we're purchasing. I mean, hearing about kids dancing and kids out there during all these other times, we're not talking about equipment for those kids.
We are, with part of this inclusion grant, I'm trying to maximize that 25,000. So we are including a few more pieces in in this grant. So for one of them we'd have to move a piece out of the way that was improperly stalled. And we
Right.
can put in something there. But also, if you recall, we have that bank of swings that go like this that we should not have. We're supposed to put a barrier so that kids coming off the slide don't run right through that bank of swings, and they put it off to the side too much. So we need actually more of a physical barrier there. And so I have a couple pieces that we could stick there as well. So it's for the whole elementary school.
Okay, and those pieces, we couldn't just put a barrier there. We'd need actual playground equipment.
Oh,
there.
yeah. I mean, I don't like a wall.
Well,
or like-
I don't know.
Yeah,
what I
I
mean, by a
something that-
barrier, I don't know what that, I mean, it could be little, I don't know, wood.
I think like something that they could play on. I mean, it's a small footprint, so we have to be really careful of what we put there. But yeah, like, I would put something, I mean, they're gonna climb on anything that you put there.
Right, right. All right. And it's okay for them to climb on the barrier, but it's not okay for a child to run in front of the swing. I
Yeah, yeah.
guess that's what I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, you want, so a child coming off the slide, so we didn't have the money to move the swings. So, right, the swings do this.
Yeah,
And so the recommendation was to put something that would kind of stop them or slow them down in terms of, I mean, they could still run through, I guess, but like distract them essentially. So we have these little pods that they kind of hop around on,
mhm.
but they were placed too far over to the side and not spread out like we really needed them to be. So we could put something else, like a balance beam or something there that then kind of stops them from just running and
Okay,
plowing right
gotcha.
through.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, well, I would suggest if you wanted to talk to Randy, Lisa's offered to come over and take a look at it with you as well. And I guess maybe if we could just get the pricing on a few of those pieces, then we can decide what would be necessary.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to come, maybe we could pick a time during the day. I don't know how you feel about that, Troy. Do you want to see it with children or no children? Okay. All right, so maybe we could do some,
I don't, yeah, we'll just contact each other, I guess.
yeah,
about-
or if
pick-
anybody else
pick out a
wants to.
time.
Okay.
All right, then I'm gonna just go through the list a little bit on the non-lapsing, so we can see if some of these things have moved, if some of them are still priority. One thing was the storage shed. Have you gotten any bids on that yet, Troy?
I think we have none.
Okay, because we were
Yeah.
gonna look at it,
Yeah, we have none.
we're gonna look at a metal shed, like purchasing metal shed.
Right.
And we haven't looked online for that or anything?
Oh, we have. Oh, we've looked online. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But we don't have any bids.
Do we know about how much they are? Because when I
Yes.
was looking, they were how much, like
Yeah.
25,000? How much were they?
I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head. I think we were looking at like, I think it was 30.
Okay. So
uh,
much different than the 80 we initially thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, okay.
But we did the RFP, we posted it, we were supposed to post it, and we have no bids. Which,
Well, I think a lot of those things, I don't know that they bid for that. I think
No,
we
we don't.
maybe just need 3 price quotes would
right,
be,
but our policy says sealed bids if it's over 20,000, so that's why we did the RFP. We're
Okay.
Trying to follow our policy,
right,
but given that we followed it and we don't get any bids, I think now we do the quotes,
okay,
right? Maybe that's the next step, because
okay.
if you're all okay with that.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think we should probably see some,
Or else it won't happen.
right. I think we need, well, that's just it. I think we need to
Right.
start seeing some
Yeah,
quotes on
okay.
that for sure.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
And then obviously the concrete slab would have to go underneath that.
Right,
Electrical, you weren't sure that we needed that right away.
right. That could be something we add on later.
Okay. The playground upgrades, we had 5,000 on there before, so obviously we might be looking at a larger number than that. The wood shop, we had renovations, equipment, supplies for the 23-24. Do we think that's still gonna come out of non-lapsing, or do we think we may be able to get that out of this year's budget? Do you know yet? If that was one of the things?
If you want me to look in the budget and put that as a priority, I could certainly do that.
Well, we can
Uh,
see your
and
other
I-
list first,
yeah,
I think. I
right.
was just curious
Yeah.
if you knew if that was part of that list or
No,
not,
it's
not at
right
this
now.
point.
No,
Okay,
because you guys have voted to put it in the non-lapse. area,
okay,
So,
that's fine.
but yeah, we can certainly consider moving it out of non-lapsing.
All right, the grounds equipment, did we we got the lawnmower, correct?
Well, it was supposed to come in,
Okay.
at the end of this week.
And we haven't paid for it yet, we're just,
It's ordered.
yeah, okay. And the security cameras, we're gonna try to do those through grant?
We did get another quote. We
Mm-hmm,
have two quotes now. One is
Okay.
like 39,000, one is 35,000. So, I think Bill referenced it maybe in his report saying that we're not quite sure we're gonna be able to get another quote,
all right.
on that.
And
'cause
did
there's
we,
so
you
many-
know,
so many companies that do
did
that.
we put those in the grant, the safety grant, those
Yeah,
cameras?
those are listed in the grant.
They are, okay.
Yeah. But the grant, remember, is a reimbursement grant too. So you pay for it and then you get reimbursed.
Percentage.
Yeah.
Do you remember what-
It's somewhere around between 50%, 55% reimbursement.
Okay.
How does reimbursement work with this account?
Good
We-
question.
So I don't know that that works for us, does it?
For the cameras?
For
For
anything.
reimbursement,
Can
yeah,
we Be reimbursed into this account.
that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I guess
Oh,
Bill probably
maybe
knows
not.
better,
Good question.
but we might have to just,
Let's look into that because
Yeah.
maybe what we would have to do is pay 55% of it from our budget. And then when it gets reimbursed, that could go all back into
With the
budget.
budget, Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so I'll make a note of that, Steph. That's a really
Yeah,
good
and hopefully
question.
Reimbursement doesn't take a long time.
Right. And usually on grants like that, you shouldn't. be waiting a long time.
Yeah. Hopefully, soon, whether we get it or not.
And I know there's a state piece that talks about the idea of like insurance repayments or other things like that. And I'm wondering if the grant repayment would fall into the same thing. But I can't remember if that falls under non-lapsing.
We can't do it in non-lapsing though. We just can't fund non-lapsing with anything other than year-end overage. So I don't think mid-year we can go put money back into
right.
it.
Right.
So I'll look further into that stuff for sure. That's a really good question. Then the other one that we have on here, which is sort of, there's a couple of general numbers on here that I think we really need to kind of nail down a little bit. Especially like looking, for example, at our current budget. We still have money left over in travel and conferences, over 50% of our budget, that what we budgeted for that. But then we have Teacher Academy on here for 75,000. And I know we talked about in-house and that being sub work and stuff.
I think, honestly, I don't think that is a priority over some of the other things that we're talking about.
Okay,
I mean, that would be a nice luxury type
Right.
thing, but if we're talking about maybe doing the fields, getting a shed, doing the playground, I think we take that off. the
Okay.
list.
okay. And then what about the academic programs under, again, we didn't have anything specific. So it was kind of like programs that support innovative instruction. That was like flagged at about 28,000, but we didn't really have those programs. Is that kind of the same thought process there right now?
That's not, is that the 28,000 for, workshops? and
It just
TP,
says
professional development?
academic programs. It
No.
doesn't really say.
Okay, so, yeah, that was like a placeholder, I believe, for things like the science of reading materials, which we've identified a
Okay.
potential program,
Right.
which might have the money to pay for it for this year, so I do
Okay.
think that could come off the list as well.
Okay, because I mean, I don't want to cut your innovative instruction
No,
things if that's
No,
where
I
you're
think,
at,
no, but
but
that's that's the type of thing that just
Right.
cutting edge, up-to-date instruction, and that reading program is it, so that would be like that. So
Okay.
I think we could take it off.
all right. And then we also have money in here on Alternative Education Center, wouldn't that come through special education grants and special education funding or through the budget? Or I'm just not sure why we were looking to fund the Alternative Education Center through non-lapsing.
Wasn't it the two paras?
No.
No,
Renovations, equipment and supplies.
yeah, it was,
The pairs were in the grant.
I think we could take that off as well.
Okay.
Honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, how about where,
much did we say?
about 10K?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could take-
Okay,
And I'll break these down and I'll have Bill
and I can
take the
get,
list.
I can get you this too.
Okay,
I'm taking pretty good notes, so I'll get it
Okay.
to you. You don't have to
all right.
worry about it too much. The used van, have we made any movement on that or thought any more about that?
So what again?
The van for sports
Yeah,
transportation?
well, yeah, yeah, all right, so some thoughts on that. One is, we've looked at like the state bid list to purchase one. And it's kind of crazy. It's like, $85,000, and like, I don't see how we're gonna do that and prioritize that over some of the other things. So we did, talk about the idea of maybe leasing a like 10-passenger van, because we will have 3 faculty members that are certified to drive that. And that could really help with our sports transportation. And right now we have, our athletic directors using the senior van at times, and it's really nice the town's letting us do that. But if we had our own, or at least leased, so Bill Merrill is looking into, leasing options for a van just to see what it would cost. Maybe it's not a good idea, but I think something we could look into.
All right, my question on that
Yeah.
is that we pay M&J to provide all transportation for sports. It's part of our
Well,
contract.
We pay them per run.
We pay per run.
Yeah, we're not paying for it unless we get it.
So it isn't part of that contractual
It's part of the
number.
contract that they will provide, but we pay for each run that they provide.
Would they provide us a van?
Maybe. In fact, I just had a meeting, with transportation. And they were gonna check into whether they could get a van that our people would be able to drive.
I guess that would be the big question is, would they let
But
our drivers
They-
drive their
they-
van?
They would if they're M&J employees when they're doing it. So if it's after school time and they're not on our company time, right? They're not getting paid as a teacher.
Right.
It's like after school and they're, or it's a Saturday or something and they're taking the golf team to a tournament, then there would be technically an M&J employee while they're driving the M&J vehicle.
So the liability would fall on M&J should anything happen, but at the same time, probably charging a higher rate than if we had access to the vehicle on our own and
Probably.
using our own people,
Probably.
potentially.
Would we want to keep this as a priority on the list right now, or would we want to make this part of the discussion as we're looking at transportation?
I would love to hear this from Ellen, because I know, for example, our middle school baseball team I was watching the other day, there's only 10 kids on the team. If we had a 16-passenger van, we could
There you go.
eliminate bus transportation for that. And it's gotta be relatively significant when all is said and done. I know sports transportation is a relatively big number.
Transportation in general, when you're using it outside of getting
It's-
to and from school, is a large number.
Right, because you're talking about basically overtime pay to drivers and other things like that.
Right.
And so I guess I would like to hear how many of our teams could use this. Because if we could use it for our even our high school or baseball or softball teams, if they would fit onto one of these
Right.
vans and we had
Well,
something like that.
I
would
can
that-
tell you, I can tell you just off the top of my head, football, right? Just going to practice at Griswold every day, van could be used for that.
Yep.
The golf team, could be used for that. Probably often the cross-country team, it could be used depending on how many runners are going.
So
So this
could
already
we-
seems like an efficiency to me. I think that
It,
this is
it does, but I'm also wondering, again, if these are monies we've already budgeted for and we're going to save on transportation, is this a purchase that we could make in our existing budget because we've already budgeted for transportation for those things?
good point.
Yeah.
Where, I'd like to see the cost savings.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
So if we already are saying that this is the amount that goes to transporting people to Griswold. Now, if
Right.
we take that money that we're using to transport people to Griswold, turn it around and lease a van or buy a
Right.
van, then
a good
yeah,
point.
that's a great.
We're
Have we
already
Right.
using
considered
this.
talking to the town about some sort of a long-term agreement that works both for the senior center, right? Because that's where the current
Yeah.
thing resides. And us, so for example, maybe the senior center doesn't need a full-time van, and we don't necessarily need a full-time van. So is there a way to say, like, we'll each contribute this much money
Yeah.
to get what we need? I'd hate to see us,
Does the senior center have a van now?
well, that's what we're using.
Yeah, they let us use it.
But I mean,
And I think we pay a lot. Anyway, I think it's $100 a time. maybe,
Yeah,
But we pay M&J like 200 and
So I was
something.
gonna say, it's,
Right.
that's still substantially less than you're paying the bus.
Yeah.
company
I wonder
for-
if there's just like a more permanent plan looking forward. What, cause I think, doesn't the town have two? Don't they have a bigger one and a
I-
smaller one? Thought
I-
there were two.
They may.
I might be thinking wrong.
cause
So
I was gonna
that's-
say, this sounds like something we could use every day. Because
Right.
in the fall,
Yeah.
we have 6 days a week that kids are going
To and from places.
to and from Griswold for football at least, right? And then we also have, I mean, we have tennis in the spring, we've got
Golf.
track and field, we've got, I
Well,
don't
and if we're
know.
paying $100 a usage, we could certainly lease a van for a heck of a lot.
Right.
Right, and I think,
$3,000
Or
a
speak
month.
to them about how often are they using it, right? So.
Well,
sure,
I
we
guess that
might
would be the thing, if they're,
Use it every day or 5 days a week, maybe, but what is, like, how frequently do they need to use it? So is it
Right.
something that we could do together?
So let's get that information. And I have a note on this, so you don't have
Oh.
to write that down even.
but the short answer to your question earlier, Christine, is I think, yes, this should be a priority.
Yeah, so right, I'm not, that isn't my question. Yeah, so we want to find out about that van that's available. We want to get a cost comparison as to what the savings would be in our existing budget if we were transporting those sports that we already have in our existing budget. And then where do we make the decision on that spend? Is it in our existing budget? Because if it's a lease or something like that, it's something we're going to have to pay for year after year after year. It isn't gonna be a once and done thing, so, all right. Keep it on there and now figure out where the funding is, right? All right, then we've got the windows in the vestibule, that's going through the safety grant as well. The bollards are going through the safety grant. All right. Excellent, thank you, Irma. Appreciate that. The steep grant match, our portion of that match is about 25,000. Is that about what we're thinking? Or was that the whole, we have 25,000 here written for the education or the elementary school playground that we did the steep grant for.
I was gonna say, we said 40 when we voted on it.
But was that our reimbursable amount or the total amount?
That was our put in. They were talking 120,000 as the total. So,
Right, it was 118 initial quote,
Okay.
but then when they did the RFP, it came in at 130. And that was the same company.
So our portion's about 40.
That's right.
Sorry, before we go off that, any updates on that? On when that's gonna happen?
We were hoping that it'll happen this summer.
Okay.
But I don't think we have any confirmation on that, but that's what we're hoping for.
I think the paving plants are just starting to open, right? Like
don't
the
know.
people that, like the material plants, because they don't operate in the colder weather. So I think that
I thought it was a summer project. just
that
kind of
stuff
how
will
summer-
all, I would imagine we would hear about soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. The other one that I'm not sure we want to be putting in non-lapsing, again, it seems budgetary to me, but we can discuss it, is the supplies for the co-op sports. Was that a one-time supply?
we had moved that out of the budget into non-lapsing as a way of lowering our overall budget this year. So that was one of the moves that we had made.
Okay.
And we had talked about it as not necessarily a one-time, but not a yearly expense,
right.
but rather a time to kind of give a influx of money to be able to get the football uniforms,
Yeah.
those other pieces of things, especially I think the football uniform was the big one that Ellen had mentioned.
So, and there's always going to be those yearly costs with football uniforms because of the reconditioning and certifications of the helmets, the pads, things like that, that aren't necessarily there. So there's always going to be that added or that yearly incurred cost for those pieces of equipment.
And none of that is in our current budget. So we might be able to- Roof repair for the bird damage.
I believe that we never voted
Mhm,
to do that, right?
mhm, Right,
Just on the wish list.
right,
I believe we made some of those repairs
okay.
already. I don't know if we completely had done it, but any work that we had done, we've paid for. I'm not positive on that,
Okay,
actually, if we actually fixed the bird damage or you know, any of it. I'm just kind of speculating.
okay,
So I'll have to find that out. I know we made repairs on the middle school, high school with the flashing issue and, seems to have worked and we paid for that. But about the bird damage, I'll have to check.
okay. And then we had the field improvements based on the field study, so that's nothing we're gonna spend right at this moment until
No.
we make a decision on moving forward. He did mention that we're doing some work on the fields right now. That's being covered in current budget.
That's correct. Yeah, that's current
Okay.
budget. Yeah. And, Ian had mentioned that. There was basically some just maintenance, annual maintenance that we budget each year.
Okay,
Was that all the air rating that happened to
Yes,
the
yeah,
baseball
the
field
plug.
and stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
The plug, yeah.
Yeah.
and then we had a possibility of bus transportation software. I think we hold on that till we do our transportation discussion and
Yeah,
any work
yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I don't think the bus transportation, software probably, I mean, we can have it on the radar and consider it, but I don't think it's a serious consideration. Because we're relatively, and we got 12 buses, down from 13, and I did meet with, the bus company, and when the transportation committee meets, I'll come and share data that they gave to me. We have some things.
I know that we've talked about it before. And as I look at this list and think about what we've already spent and what we're planning to spend, as well as the fact that we're gonna spend this account down pretty far in the next few months. I think it's worth mentioning again that there still is that sort of outstanding problem that since we have a new school, we no longer have a group that is funded to maintain our building. So prior to the school building, the ad hoc school building committee, there was the permanent school building committee. And that was not funded through the Board of Education, while it is funded by the taxpayer. It just wasn't part of our budget, and things like the bird damage to the roof, we wouldn't be looking to pay for that, right? So it would be funded as part of the regular budget, and things that happen to maintain the structure of the building would be taken care of there. I think it's important, not just because we really don't want to spend our non-lapsing account on fixing plumbing and roofing, although important, certainly not what that non-lapsing account is for. But also looking ahead, if there were to ever be a significant issue, we'll be stuck trying to figure out how do we take care of it instead of having a process in place to take care of it. I mean, ultimately, what's going to happen if we have a big issue, we're going to have to go to the town for an appropriation. But I think we need to really think about a plan. And I know that doesn't just involve us, and that's why we can't do it, because it really involves creating this thing again, that we'll need to talk to the town again. But I say this just to keep it on our radar that we have to figure that out.
That came up at the tri-board, right? I mean,
It
and
did.
it was
I know
supposed to
it's
come up
it's
again.
continuing to come
Right,
up with the selectmen. We
I
just-
think we need to do that discussion at the next.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that isn't a Board of Ed decision. I think that's got to be a decision through the town.
It for sure does. And right now, though, the Board of Ed being held financially responsible for these things as they come up. So I think we have taken it immediately, because of the things that we're currently paying for.
Right.
But also, yeah, yeah, but I think you're right, Christine, it's gotta be something that we all agree on, and helpful to have the Board of Finance agree on it as well, as they're going to have to be the one allocating funds to go into that account. But we've got to keep that conversation happening.
We do. And we did away with that fund a while back, and we did have big things come up. We've replaced boilers with our budget. We've replaced parts of roofs with our budget. We've done a lot of things that we weren't anticipating. So we'd like to get ahead of that if at all possible.
And I know we cut the funding to that as we started talking about building a new school, right? So why are we funding the permanent school building committee to do repairs on a building we're going to knock down or renovate? But that, we're through that now. It's a new day and we have to address it.
Just trying to add this up.
Can I add something
Sure.
that we've talked about? I'd really, really, really like to start seriously thinking about before and after school care program, please.
Yeah, I definitely think we can start looking at that. I think that we want to look at, I don't know that that's a non-lapsing fund thing, because that's not a one and done. That's going to be something that has to be paid for year after year after year. I also think that there's a willingness for parents to pay for that as well. So, but I definitely think if we want to start an initiative on that, we can do that. We just need to start looking at that.
I think we talked about just having like a little bit of seed money from the non-lapsing in one of the conversations, just to kind of get it started. But then, yes, certainly looking at revenue generation. But I think maybe now would be a good time to maybe think about that, if we could.
All right, do we want to put a subcommittee together on that, or how do we want to start? I mean, we can
Sure.
think about it, but how do we want to start moving it
Yeah.
forward?
Yes.
Can we also in those conversations include the recreation department, who run so many of those things, right? They run our summer program. They run a lot of mini camps. If we could do some sort of a crossover thing with rec.
I
Yes.
think a lot of the conversations that are being had include rec.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that would be really helpful, and they still have COVID money.
And a
Yes.
large building.
Yes, all of the things.
Yeah,
Let's
so
do
maybe
it.
just another opportunity for us to pool our resources.
Yes, I would love to be on another subcommittee. Please. Would anybody else like to join me?
I would love to have another discussion about before and after school care. I think
I would love to be on that subcommittee.
All right, any more discussion on non-lapsing right now? We'll get the additions of these. We'll get an updated non-lapsing report out. We're moving RFP for the fields and grounds, and then we've got some work going on with the playground equipment. Does that sound pretty inclusive? Okay. The other thing is, I think we want to prioritize. I definitely think the before and after school program is important. We're also looking at transportation. We're going to want community involvement in all of that. I feel like if we can really dig in on the transportation, we might find enough savings there that's going to help us with some of these other things. So let's definitely start having those conversations on the before and after care. Maybe we think about a survey, something like that, just to get a feel for what parents want. I know there's going to be a huge want for it. We also have a school coming in over here. I wonder how that's going to impact what goes on across the street. What she's going to offer, I'm not really sure.
I've been told only birth to 3 there.
Okay.
Christine, I don't know if they have in the lease like a no compete clause.
I don't believe they do. Who would they non-compete with? Do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that was part of it. So let's see where we get with the transportation, maybe get a survey out about before and after care, and then kind of roll one into the other, if that makes sense. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if I had the questions, I could certainly put a survey together and put it out to parents. That's not a problem. Pretty easy.
All right, some policy review.
All right, I can blow through this quick. I know this is getting to be a long meeting.
We knew it would be too.
So A and B, 6142 and 6,000 were the things that Troy gave us that I wanted to double check on. Lisa and I looked at them, and the thing is, Troy did his work on the new CABE policy, not the policy that we actually have. So what he gave you is good. Meaning that's the new CABE policy, but we would have to approve, just so you're aware, what we'd be approving is not just his new language in there, but that entire policy, because that policy, both of those policies are not our policies. Those are CABE policies that are not in the North Stonington policy book. So we would need to move to, I think everybody was pretty happy with Troy's language. Just know that those two policies include a variety of things that we also need, including the fact that it includes the Black and Latino studies that's now required by state law. It includes the Native American studies that is required by state law. That's not in our current, but it was one that we were going to need to update anyway. So we would be adopting the new CABE policies plus Troy's language would be the actual process of that, those two policies. So I would make a motion to approve policies 6142 and 6,000 as presented by Troy at the last meeting with his language changes included.
So the last page, so the second page on that 6142. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the second for discussion. Those are optional and it says district choice.
It says district choice, but if you look at the different pieces of it, like we can pull certain things out of those, but there are some that are mandated by law. The African-American, Black studies, Puerto Rican, Latino studies, the Native American studies, those are all legally mandated new programs we have to start. I believe the Black and Latino studies is for next year, is the first year in. Native American was this
Now,
past year.
this current year was the first year for the
Black and Latino.
Black and Latino studies. And we
Okay.
did run the course.
Right.
We did offer it.
And it's just the fact
Okay.
that, and we don't have to, we can take some of those out if you would prefer to. But again, it was based on, I was basing it on the fact that Troy had looked through it, so I assumed that those were courses we were offering.
I just, my only concern, and I certainly want to do what's required, but if we all of a sudden, as a policy, have to offer all of these courses, do we have the teaching staff to offer them? Do we have the time for them?
Yeah.
Do we have kids that are actually going to sign up for?
We
All of these?
By law, for that
Yes.
Black and Latino course and then the Asian studies, all we have to do is offer it. And if kids sign up, enough kids, then we have to actually run it.
Two
So,
kids
yeah,
sign up,
We,
it doesn't make any sense to run the course,
if there's no kids,
Right.
you don't run it because
Or
there's no students.
even one or two, because that's,
So you have to, I actually had to fill out a survey this year with the state, a couple days ago. And link to our electronic program of studies on the webpage where the description of the course is. And say that, yes, we did offer it and yes, we did run it. And I put a comment in and said that, if it was a semester course, more kids would take it, but it's a year-long course. And for kids to fit that in their schedule,
Right.
very difficult. But if it was only semester, but the law is it has to be year-long, right? So hopefully they change that so more kids would take it. Or if we don't want kids to take it, then keep it year-long. Wouldn't be bad for
Well,
more kids to take it.
right, and if you do,
Can you clarify that this isn't telling us that we have to include American Sign Language? Is that just an option? I know, I don't think we have that class now. I don't even know if we have an instructor and I wouldn't want us to.
It's odd, Stephanie, because it's I apologize, I don't want to, but it's included in all of the policy pieces. However, it also states when able to locate an
Perfect. So we're not
appropriate-
saying like
well,
next
there
year,
are-
No,
we've got to
there-
change that.
it just,
Okay.
it has a variety of mitigations to it, because I was confused by it as well, because I was like, we don't offer, it's in our current policy. So our current policy says that we would do that.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
and,
Then I'm okay.
and you don't have to run it if you cannot find a certified American Sign Language teacher, which those are few and far between.
So this would replace our current policy. And this is not our current language at all.
A variety of the pieces match. If you would, if we're uncomfortable with it, I am fine with calling this a first read at this point, and we can look at it next time, because it is, I'll withdraw my motion without a problem. But if the problem is that people need to read through it, I thought people had read through it because we had looked at it last time.
We had it at the last meeting. That was the first read. I mean, we.
It
should've
was
done
the first read. I just didn't realize it wasn't our existing policy, and I'd like to look at our existing policy. And then my other question is that this is a mandated policy as written?
It is not a mandated policy in the sense that they have introduced this and stated you have to change your policy to this.
Okay,
It is an outdated policy that we currently have that does not include legally mandated things. So what I would say is we are currently not up to snuff on our policy. We need to change something. If there's some language change in this policy that we want to adjust differently, that's fine, but there are a variety of things in this policy that we don't currently have in our policy that is on our handbook. And we are out of compliance.
Yeah, the main thing that's different is none of this is in our current policy. Everything else, the language is pretty much the same, other than the amendments. that-
okay, that's what I didn't know, if the language was the same or, so it's just this optional piece is not in our current one. Is that what you're saying? And the stuff that we've changed here in red and green. All right.
The third paragraph in the policy also includes a variety of class list pieces that are not the same as the ones that we currently have, and some of them are off.
So if you guys are comfortable and want to vote on it, that's fine with me. So, all those in favor? Opposed? And I'm going to abstain because I did not read the current policy. I apologize.
Note 6142 and 6000, we're both on that. All right, so 5125 student records and confidentiality, we'd given as a first read the last time. I'm not sure if people had the opportunity to be able to read through this. When Lisa and I met, our recommendation is to take the second version of it, where it says another version of this mandated policy at the top. We prefer that one. We think that it is more concise. We think that it includes certain language that we prefer, and we like the way it was written out. So that would be our recommendation. One of the things that I said that I appreciate is that it very clearly states at the bottom of the first page the fact that the term of educational records does not include records kept in the sole possession of the maker. I think that that's a pretty clear legal decision that's been made for educational records, and I think that it's good to have it in our policy, because what it does is provide a lot of clarity to parents if they are searching for educational records and they may not be privy to certain pieces of information that are provided in certain ways. So I like the way that it's written in here. And when Lisa and I talked about it, we just thought that it was the better version of the two, and that it explained everything it needed to in a better way. So that would be, from the policy committee, our recommendation would be the second version.
The motion?
Sure. I make a motion to approve policy 5125 as the second version in the packet that you were given, that has another version of this mandated policy written at the top.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
All right. Policy 6162.51. Again, had a variety of different versions. When Lisa and I read through them, we came to the conclusion that our favorite was the one that has a statement at the top. This is a mandated I think it's the third one actually. On the total, it says a mandated policy to consider addressing notification, inspection of surveys and other aspects of student privacy and parental access to information. And then it has a secondary line that says this is a more concise version of our previous sample and is offered as an alternative. We both thought that this really nailed down the very specific situations and would make it much more readable for parents to be able to access, look at, and be able to say, hey, listen, these are the types of surveys that we are allowed to have, you know, rights over. These are the types of things that we should be informed of. And it kind of lays it out with the very clear bullet points. And I think we both appreciated how quick and easy it was to read. I don't know if anybody else has any other discussion on that, but I'll make a motion and allow discussion if people prefer some of the other language. But I would make a motion to approve policy 6162.51 as the more concise version of the previous sample offered as an alternative.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain.
And then the final one that that we had met on and that we had given as a first read was simply the student representatives on the Board of Education. We had both felt that it was most prudent at the time to table this discussion until a future year. Because at the moment, what we have is 2 student board representatives who are juniors. This policy is a little bit constricting, we felt like. It had the date
Staggered.
process, the very, very strict timelines. I don't feel like we had a bunch of students kicking down the door to get onto the board representation piece. And if we get to that point, then I think that we revisit a policy like this in order to consider, hey, how do we pare down this process and create something that's functional for our administration and for us to be able to find those. But at the moment, we didn't feel like it was necessary. And we felt like this policy might have been a little bit too stringent in the way that it did it for the way we do it. We thought that perhaps it would be a more organic approach for us since we're just beginning with this and that we can tackle those issues as they present themselves. So I would just ask that we table that. I don't know that I need to make a motion on that.
No.
I think we just
Let
go
'em go.
past it unless anybody else had a differing opinion on that.
No, but I appreciate that because I think if we start just putting policies on to put policies on, we're going to be back into a place where we have to delete 177 policies. So I appreciate your taking a look at that and realizing we don't have to take every policy that CABE suggests.
Oh, believe me, we don't. We
No, I know.
we get about 30 policies a quarter.
I realize that. Let's see. So we need to propose for executive session.
Could I just ask that we add a topic to executive session? We have superintendent evaluation, but I would also like to discuss negotiation, specifically possible memorandum of agreements connected to contracts that I have drafts that I would like to discuss with you.
So I need a motion to change 9 under executive session, adding contract negotiation.
I'll make a motion to amend 9 to add contract negotiation.
All right. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in
I
favor?
would just say contract negotiations are actually excluded from any meeting requirements and therefore don't need to be added on. We can discuss them outside of a meeting environment or an executive session.
But we need to have it on our agenda.
We don't, but I'm not concerned about adding it to the agenda, but I don't believe it's necessary.
I thought there's like 6 reasons that you can go into executive
Yeah.
session and negotiations is one of them
Yes.
listed. So maybe we're both right.
I would rather, for transparency purposes, have it on why we are in executive session. And one of the things we will be discussing tonight is contract negotiations. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? and abstain. Okay, and we need a motion to go into executive session.
I make a motion to go into executive session.
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Thank you, Irma. We'll take minutes of when we enter or when we exit. Thank you.
Jerry, oh. Bye.